Welcome back, dear listeners, to the Friday Fight Podcast, where we rank, recap, and review every horror movie in a given franchise. I'm Jumpscare Jer, and/or Geraldine, the Fright of the podcast.
And I'm Frankie, the Flight of the podcast.
And today we're continuing on with our spooky, dark, and twisty man, Tim Burton himself. What are we covering today?
We're covering the one and only 2007 musical, Sweeney Todd.
The musical adaptation, absolutely. Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street.
I never knew that subtitle.
Never?
No, I only knew of it as Sweeney Todd. And right off the bat, this movie is nothing like I thought it would be. I've heard of Sweeney Todd before, but I could have sworn it had like Robert Downey Jr. was in it, and it was about like a detective.
Like Sherlock Holmes?
I think so. I thought that's what like this was gonna be. And obviously we kick off and it's nothing like that.
And you've never had any experience with the previous musical?
No. Well, first of all, when they started singing, I didn't even know it was a musical.
What?
I had no clue. I also didn't know there was a barber aspect to it whatsoever.
Yeah, you know how the title card says, Sweeney Todd, the demon barber?
No, I only knew the Sweeney Todd part. I didn't know the demon barber.
After it shows the title card, it says inspired by the musical by Sondheim.
I must have not been looking at the screen.
You just were not paying attention. I
was waiting for Robert Downey Jr.'s name to pop up.
I can only imagine your face when it was Johnny Depp and Jamie Campbell Bower on the boat.
Well, they started singing, and I was like, "Oh, I guess this has a song in it."
Sailed the world, and you're probably like,
and then
what?
they stopped singing, and I was like, "Okay," and then kept singing.
That's typically how musicals go. There's a little bit of singing, a little bit of talking,
yeah.
a little bit of singing, a little bit of talking. So this is your first experience with it.
First time.
Generally, do you like musicals?
I love musicals. I haven't seen many of them, but whenever I do see one, I enjoy it quite a bit. But I will say, I do think I'm a little bit picky. I'm a little bit picky on the musicals because
no, I can agree with that. I'm very picky on my musicals.
I'll go on Spotify and I'll listen to just a soundtrack of a musical, basically, like the songs. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, this kind of music isn't for me. And with this movie, even I did struggle a little bit with the music in it and like adapting to okay, this is the structure that we're going for here.
That is blasphemous because this is Stephen Sondheim himself. He's notable in the musical community. Have you had any experience with this stuff?
Didn't he do Into the Woods?
He sure did. I love it.
I've never heard of the gentleman.
Frank is not very familiar with musicals in general, I would say. So.
No, my favorite musical is Hamilton.
That's a good one.
And so now every time I listen to a musical, I want it to be like that. And then most of the time it isn't.
Most musicals are not like that.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So sometimes
Hamilton's kind of the first of its kind, I would say.
I've heard I don't know if it's Wicked, but parts of that, and it's so slow and panned out and and when I'm used to Hamilton where it's dot information, and also it's historical, so it's based off something.
This is also historical.
Yeah, I know this one is, but I'm saying Wicked, I'm sure none of that happened in real life.
Well, I don't know, but I know that is based on a book. I think that's Gregory Maguire, but... So
it's taking me a little bit to adapt. And
this is also based on a book as well. So, lots of different cool things, lots of different bits of history. I actually have included a clip, I don't remember what the name of it is, about the actual brief history, which also is included in this book in front of you with the movie poster, about the supposed inspiration behind Sweeney Todd by he's inspired by an actual French killer type of thing. It was based on an actual true thing. There's not really a lot of evidence to support the claim, but it is supposed. So I believe it, though. I'm a firm believer.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. Another podcast that I listen to is called Southern Gothic, and they cover basically ghost stories or just creepy stories that have occurred here in the South. Ooh, and there's a lot based in Tennessee because a lot of stuff happens.
Bell Witch, yeah,
that's one of them, and they cover it, and it's just it's one of the most documented ghost stories, they're popular ones that we know. So it is interesting to look through.
Are you a believer?
Oh, yeah, totally, for sure.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll play this clip, and hopefully it'll kind of give you a little bit of insight as to what we're dealing with here.
Did you know that the story that inspired Sweeney Todd originated from France? It can be traced back to the murders of the Rue de la Harpe, supposedly documented in 1816 by Joseph Fouché, the Parisian chief of Napoleon's police. This report told of a series of murders committed by a barber working alongside a male baker who'd then use their flesh in a pastry or pâté. Discovered one way or another, potentially by either a dog or an angry mob, the duo would have been executed on the rack in 1801 and their buildings torn to the ground. Unfortunately, the actual account seems to be missing, so it's impossible to validate beyond us knowing that 2 buildings were in fact torn down in Rue de la Harpe at this time. The story would be taken to the UK in 1825, and there it would eventually morph into The String of Pearls and consequently, Sweeney Todd.
Interesting. You know, I've never heard about this before, like what it consists of. The story is very unique, very out there.
I love it.
And to me, it felt very Shakespearean and very tragic. Like there's like so many tragic elements of like
There are.
these reveals and like the situations that these people find themselves in.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of different, I mean, I would say that this is very, very close to the musical adaptation. However, in my own experience, I started with the film and not the musical version. So when it came time that I saw the musical version, like IRL, I was like, this is not what I remember. But it's obviously the movie's based on the musical. It's just Tim Burton has a very dark and macabre taste on it.
So you've seen the musical?
Mm-hmm. I've seen it twice.
Oh wow!
I've seen it twice. Yeah, one
I'm
of them
jealous.
was at it's actually my playbill. There is from the Nashville Repertoire Theater. So at TPAC, again, love it. I'm a lover of the arts. My mom took me as a 16th birthday surprise, and it was one of the coolest birthday surprises.
That is really
she got me cabaret seats, so the actors were running around us and stuff like that, which was even more cool.
Yeah.
You felt really immersed. And
I'm jealous.
yeah, it was super, super fun. And then another year later, or not year, but like years later, I went to a local production of it from my old hometown, and it was actually pretty good too.
You'll have to let me know because it sounds like your hometown has done a couple of cool productions.
They have done several cool productions. It's just sometimes it's not going to be up to the caliber of the higher quality performances, only because we have a lot of people who are passionate about theater but are not very good at executing. Like, for example, sometimes mics will cut out completely and then they're singing a song with their whole heart and you can't hear a word, and you're like, that sucks, because you know they're putting so much effort into it and you can barely hear it. So you're like,
I'd still have an appreciation for it. Like I'm not super snobby about that kind of thing, and I know what it is to like perform and to like organize, so
it's a lot. But I mean, a lot of really cool things go into it. Of course, this is one of my favorite musicals. You mentioned being picky. I myself am picky. I actually do not really like a lot of the, like, I don't know what the words are to describe them, but like happy sounding musicals. I don't really care for happy sounding musicals. I know it's kind of shitty. But it really just depends. And one thing that I love about Sondheim specifically is that he is so like weird. Like, not only does he do Sweeney Todd, like he's done Into the Woods, which is very whimsical and fun and dark. So many different like takes on like these classic tales, and it's just fun. And then you also have he did Company, and that's a really, really good one about like relationships and loss and like kind of navigating adulthood with that. Neil Patrick Harris more notably plays one of his leading characters, which is really, really good. One of my favorites that he's done is Sunday in the Park with George, and it's literally about a painter painting like a painting, and he's singing as he's painting, and it is so cool, especially if you appreciate stuff like nerdy things like painting, and then you're like, oh my god, he's like painting like, and he's singing about the colors that he's painting with, and it's just so like, that's, you just don't hear about it a lot. So I just think it's very unique, and I love I love his style a lot.
That is amazing. It is. It sounds like a very talented gentleman.
Very. And you know, a lot of people don't know this, I feel, but he was very involved in this production, and that was one thing that he had been approached several times by several different directors about this production, and people really wanted to do it, and he just kept, declining the offers. For whatever reason, something Tim Burton brought to the table, he said, I like it. And then he said, I'm willing to do this under one condition, that I have approval of casting. I want to maintain the casting approval. And Tim Burton said, the only thing that I'm going to ask is that Johnny Depp is going to be Sweeney Todd. And then he said, okay. He did say that Johnny Depp was more rock-oriented with his voice, which I can definitely hear that. And funny enough, Johnny Depp also is, he also plays a lot of rock music. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I see that commercial all the time. He's having a guitar, and it's like for a cologne or something.
Oh, yes. What is it called? I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool, though. I was like, oh, very fun. And, you know, I personally don't dislike his voice. I do think after comparing the musical and the movie, it is different in tonality. And it's not necessarily a complaint. I can appreciate both, but I definitely think that the movie misses out on the ability to play with the humor, because the quality that Sondheim writes with, there's so many jokes that you miss out on. First of all, there's also a lot. That's one of the complaints that I have about this rendition. But one of the complaints that I do have as well is because of the thick London accents and stuff like that. They really, try to sell it like you're in Victorian, London. It's so hard to understand some of the things that they're saying. And growing up, I never fucking understood a single word of it. I had to use subtitles a lot.
Just because they had a different accent from yours?
No, that, and they don't enunciate when they're singing either, so it's truly challenging to fully understand what they're saying.
I wonder if it is still, if you're from there, though. If you're a Londoner, if you're from...
I'm sure, people hear me and they're like, what? So, I mean, I get it. But to me, I think that it doesn't, like, for example, Helena Bonham Carter, love her. She's fantastic. I don't understand a lot of the things that she's saying in some of the songs because she's not enunciating the words. So it was very challenging for me, not a lot of the time. I mean, when I was younger specifically. And of course, now that I know the words of the songs, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But I find that subtitles are very necessary for some of those things, especially to understand what they're all saying, because some of them do like have really thick, like London accents, or they have it even more intensified, amplified because of the, the time period that we're into.
If I'm being honest, like I've never seen a musical in person. I would love to, and I hope to do that soon.
Oh my God.
But I think I would have a hard time, especially if it's the first time I'm seeing like this adaptation of it. I wouldn't understand anything they say. Like, I love Hamilton, like I said at the beginning of the episode. If my first experience was seeing it live, I wouldn't have known anything anybody was saying.
We watched Hamilton for the first time on Disney Plus, and we had subtitles on, and I was like, this is really fucking good. But it's only because I could understand everything.
Yeah, I know it took a while to come around. I remember I asked you about it first, and you were like, psh, I don't care about dumb presidents or whatever.
No, but I was a hater because it was just so popular that I was like, whatever. I thought it was going to, not to shit on Wicked, because I'm totally going to go see the movie. I don't like the music of Wicked. I don't. I don't like any of the music of it.
I don't either.
It's just it sounds too like happy to me.
To
some
me,
of it
sounds too longing and too slow and
specifically like
even
popular,
this one they're almost rapping in Sweeney Todd.
I know, I love it.
Yeah, but in Wicked they like take half an hour to say 3 syllables. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's not my preference. I've had the same problem with music, and I think we're kind of on opposite spectrums of that, especially early on. That's why I like punk music so much. It's because it's fast, it changes. But, I remember when I first met you, you were into like a lot of this indie stuff, and it was a lot slower.
Some of it, yeah.
It's hard for me to like vibe with a song. Like,
I get that.
It needs to have a switch up. It needs to be like interesting sonically for me to keep wanting to listen to it. I've since grown more into being okay with grooving to a song that's just steady. But I think I'm still having that problem with musicals. So
what's funny is I don't know. It's so funny because in my head, this song, I'm like, man, this song slaps. And then I'll play a song for my friends and be like, this song is so good. You're going to love it. I'm like, it slaps. And then my version of it slaps. They're like, what? Because it's like, I don't know, to me, I guess, or to them, it's slow. But to me, I'm like, this is fun.
Yeah, you that's never a good idea. Yeah. Never be in a car with people and put on a song that they don't know. It's excruciatingly awkward and painful to watch them. If you know the song so well and they don't, it's their first time listening to it. I am the same way about the way that I am about like wanting people to enjoy things, specifically movies. And it's really bad. You have to ask Patrick about it, because if I want someone, that's my love language, is I want to show you a movie that I love. If I am showing Patrick a movie that I love, I'm like,
just staring at him.
That's creepy and annoying.
And then like he'll be like watching the movie, and then eventually he'll be like, "What?" And then I'm like, "I'm sorry, I just want you to. I'm just watching you watch it because I want you to like love it." And then I'm like, "Oh, like catch myself making faces." Does he ever not like it? There are times that actually, one of my favorite comedic films. It is very dry. Napoleon Dynamite. He hates it. And I was like, dude, that's dumb that you don't like it because it's so good. It's so funny to me. But I have such a wide, I don't know, not wide humor, but I guess a wide love of humor that it doesn't matter what kind of humor.
Yeah,
I mean,
it fascinates me with you because I feel like sometimes you come off as such a hypocrite with that because you're like, how could you not love this thing? And then when it's something you dislike, I'm like, oh yeah, I hate it. I don't like it. I don't get why people like it. But I feel like
most of the time, I mark my words though, I feel like 90% of the time I enjoy things. Mm-hmm. I would say that I enjoy things like I'm pretty, like when I go to the movies, I'm like, yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed it. Mm. I don't think I've left the movies being like, I hated that, which is cool. I think that I'm really easy to please. And I don't see there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a hater at first, but then I give things a chance. Mm. So I think I tend to be more, I prepare myself for the negative, but okay. And I don't know if that's what you did with this. I don't know if you just walked in blind, had no experience. I did walk
completely blind, so I didn't really have any expectations. Like I said, I didn't know it was a musical. I was waiting for Robert Downey Jr. to show up.
Why Robert Downey Jr. of all people?
Because I thought he was like the main guy and he was like a detective. And he was like solving some kind of mystery.
Are you like kind of morphing some of these like shows together? Because like I know that another one that does include a detective, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, another like spooky fun one. Are you like combining?
I mean, I've never seen Sherlock Holmes.
I think he's just mashing together a bunch of British. He's like British. All of it goes together.
That makes sense. I get it.
We're watching Downton Abbey right now. I bet he expects, maybe he thinks Robert Downey Jr. is going to show up in that show too.
No, he's Iron Man.
He's an American, by the way. But
fun fact: the only American in this movie was Johnny Depp.
He's American.
He is American.
Interesting.
He was born in Owensboro, Kentucky. Born and raised there. Mm-hmm.
No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I wonder what the consensus is over his accent. I really want to know in this movie.
Well, to me, I thought he did a good job, but I'm not picky about like, oh, they all sound very Cockney and he does not. Like, I don't really know the difference.
Also,
to me.
You are an American.
I am an American, so to me, I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, I'm easy to please. But speaking of our cast, we are introduced to Johnny Depp as first Sweeney Todd. That's how we meet him, and he's on the boat with Anthony Hope, played by Jamie Campbell Bower, who we most know him. At least I first knew him from Twilight as Caius from the Volturi.
Just said a bunch of gibberish to me.
Bailey knows what I'm talking about, and the listeners know. They know what I'm talking about. He also, more notably, is in Stranger Things Season 4, and will be in Season 5, I'm sure, as Vecna. Cool. He is very, very, very cool. I like him a lot. He's also apparently been in the Harry Potter franchise as a young Grindelwald or something like that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember him being in there at all.
It's a very brief scene. You see him steal a wand and hop out of a window.
Actually, yep. I remember that now.
He's got very long blonde hair.
Yes, I do remember that now. It's all coming back to me. And funny enough, Johnny Depp was also Grindelwald. A lot of these people in this film were actually in the Harry Potter franchise.
Literally almost all of them. That's crazy.
We have Helena Bonham Carter, more notably, as Mrs. Lovett, who we meet in her pie shop, and she's making disgusting-looking pies.
Horrible.
Honestly, at this point, we need to make a list of who isn't in the Harry Potter movies in this
That's
list.
very true.
So far, we're 2 for 2, yeah?
3 for 3, actually.
There's at least 4 or 5, actually.
We have Jane Weisner, who is Joanna, who is actually Sweeney Todd's, which we find out his actual name is Benjamin Barker, but he's under a new name because he's escaped from prison. Benjamin Barker was married to Laura Michelle Kelly, who played Lucy, and the Judge Turpin, played by notable Alan Rickman, and his little handy sidekick guy, Beetle Bamford, played by Timothy Spall, charged him with the crime of foolishness because they're crooked people in the legal system. Go figure. Always making a commentary on that. And so Benjamin Barker is sent away on his crime foolishness. and they lock away Lucy and Joanna in a tower, and Lucy eventually becomes the beggar woman that we did not know was the beggar woman for a long time, and Sweeney Todd comes back to avenge his family that was taken from him and his life, the years spent in prison. And we also have 2 other characters that we get to meet along the way, which is supposed to be Tobias, but they changed it for the movie to Toby.
Tobias?
And
that
that's
Tobias?
Yeah, it's Tobias.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Oh, Tobias, whatever. Tobias.
Maybe
Toby.
somebody names their kid Tobias.
I doubt it.
Tobias.
Listen, I ain't fucking from London, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember them ever calling him that name, so I've always known it as Toby. And that's Edward Sanders, and he is a little cellar boy for Adolfo Pirelli, which is Sacha Baron Cohen. Love his character. He's an asshole as always.
He's really funny. I am not familiar with the actor.
Oh my God.
But I looked at his Wikipedia
Yeah.
before doing the show, and super cool. I mean, I've seen his characters before in Bruno and in plays this other gentleman with a mustache.
He played like a dictator as well.
Yeah.
And he also, funny enough, Helena Bonham Carter and Sacha Baron Cohen were also in Les Mis together. They did the film
Les Miserables.
Yeah.
I told you I don't like it when people call it Les Mis.
I like calling it Les Mis
so American, like Les Mis.
because it's shortened. I don't have the
Les Miserables.
I don't have the time to say
Can you
that.
say it one time properly, please?
Les Miserable.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they're in that together, and they actually play a couple hilarious one of my favorite songs that they're in. But yeah, I don't know, just lots of really cool people in this movie. It really hurts my heart to see Alan Rickman because he's no longer with us, and I love him.
Thought he gave a great performance, though.
He always does.
He
a great
also looks good
performance.
in this movie.
Yeah, he does.
He does, yeah.
He always does. So there's a lot of songs that were left out from the original musical that we'll have to eventually get to talk about. But one thing that I think is really cool is that Stephen Sondheim was involved in the process. We do have a video talking to him about that. So if you guys want to watch that one next, we can start there, and then we will just delve into this movie that we get.
I saw a production of Bond's play in 1973 at Stratford East, and just immediately was taken by it. It wasn't really very scary, but had a lot of charm, and it was sort of creepy. And I looked into the rights, and what I did was I met Bond and asked him if I could make a musical out of it, and he said yes. But it was seeing that production. Well, in this case, I was sort of paying an homage to Bernard Herrmann, who was the composer of many of the Hitchcock pictures of his middle period, anyway. And I'd remembered particularly a movie I'd seen when I was 15 years old called Hangover Square, for which Herrmann had written the music. It took place in Edwardian England, and was very creepy melodrama. And it had the music itself was sort of creepy, and I had that in mind when I was writing this. I just wanted to scare audiences. I thought, see if you can, because it's very hard to scare people in the theater except turning out the lights and going boo, and I wanted to see if I could do it. Well, sure, but that's the principle of composers like Herrmann, who wrote such really good scores for movies like Psycho. The tension that he is able to build up, or take John Williams' score for Jaws. The music itself sets the audience's nerves on edge, even if there's nothing going on the screen. And Herrmann was a master at that, and I wanted to see if I could do that in the theater. And that's why there's so much music in the piece, is that as long as you keep the music going, the audience forgets the melodramatics of the story, and you know what an over-the-top story it is, because it's a pretty wild story. And but if you keep the music going, they will be enthralled and believe what's going on the stage. It's underscoring. It's all about underscoring, and sometimes it's sung, and sometimes it's just underscoring. We had a couple of days of actual rehearsal before going into the recording studio, and that was useful, where we just sat around and sang the songs with a piano, and that's where whatever coaching I could do came in. But they were pretty much on top of the material. There wasn't a lot I had to do. I made some suggestions, but they'd learned the material very well. My reaction to the film is that, unlike almost all musical movies, in fact, I'd say all musicals made from stage, musicals that I've seen, all the movies made from stage musicals that I've seen, I would say that this is really a movie based on a musical. This is not simply, as all the others are, a film of the stage musical. Even when they take certain liberties, as with the movie of Cabaret, for example, they're essentially, it's a film of the stage musical. There is the amount of time spent on a number is the amount of time spent on the stage number. Very seldom are numbers cut down or reshaped to fit the film. The film films the number as written on the stage. That's not the case here. Numbers have been reshaped, changed, cuts have been made, little sections rewritten to make it the movie and not merely a film of the stage musical. That's the essential difference, I think, between this movie musical and others based on stage musicals. I'd say the epiphany, without giving anything away, what happens during the epiphany, I think, is just really, really brilliant. What Tim and John Logan did. Yeah, I'd say that's certainly a high point for me.
Yeah, so he was very involved, which is really cool, and you don't often see that for the actual composers to be involved, and he literally was like, I want a say-so, and I don't think Johnny Depp would have been his first choice, but I think that it ultimately worked out, and, you know, everyone did do their part. So, for example, this is Johnny Depp's second appearance in a musical film. And so I think that for his second appearance in a musical film, I think he did pretty fine. I liked it. Is it as dramatic and theatrical as the theatrical productions? Like he mentioned, this is a movie based on the musical, so it's not quite going to be a true to the stage adaptation.
I noticed that pretty early on, if I'm being honest. Like in general, when he started singing on the boat, you know, that's why I was kind of wondering, is the whole thing a musical or is it just this one bit at the beginning? Because he was just standing there, you know?
Yeah.
And then later on, when we first see Helena Bonham Carter do her song about the meat pies, she's also just the whole time sitting in front of that little station, and while Johnny Depp's character, Sweeney Todd, is sitting down. So I'm just like, I don't know. I have seen other musical adaptations, like, or film adaptations of musicals, and there's a lot more, like, you know, you call it theatrics, like somebody moving around or just more intrigue as far as the visuals. Yeah, exactly, choreography. And I did find that lacking in this movie a lot.
Yeah, I mean, my love is that it's very dark, and it really captures the dark tonality, but it doesn't capture the humor enough for me. One of the things that really stinks to me is that we've talked about it before, but like if you see a theater production of something, it is over the top because they have to compensate for, you know, the people in the very back of the room. They have to make it make sense. Like the people in the very back of the room would be like, oh, I can tell they're fake crying right now because of the sad scene that's supposed to be going on. Like they have to oversell it, versus in a movie, you have a camera in front of your face. You don't have to do near as much work because you have the audience right there, because we'll be watching it on a TV or in the movie theater with surround sound. So like you don't have to like oversell it as much. I
guess so, but my thought process is kind of like, it's kind of the same thing, but the other side of it, where like on stage you do have to have like these big movements and emotions, but you're kind of limited as far as like the space you have to work with. However, like in a movie, I feel like you have all the space all the time, and so I just expected a little more movement. But once I settled into like, this is what this is, it became fine to me. But it did take me like a little bit, like even the parts where you see Sweeney Todd starts singing and he's like in his little room or whatever. Typically you just see him like move his knife up, or, you know, as he's shaving, he'll be like singing and making little movements or whatever. But I don't know. I regardless, it took me a while to adapt, but once I did, I was like, okay. Do
you have like a good, like, did you like it? Like, I can't tell
the movie.
I can't tell if you liked the movie or the musical part of it.
You know, me and Bailey watched halfway through. I was like, hey, I have to go use the bathroom. And I looked over at Bailey and I was like, do you want to watch more of this or do you want to watch it tomorrow? Do you want to finish it tomorrow? And she said, let's watch a little more. And we were like 20 minutes in at this point.
Okay.
Came back, watched another 30 minutes, and then we saved the rest for the next day. But once we saved that, we were up to like 50 minutes. And I told her like, I'm really liking this. Like the first time I paused to use the bathroom 20 minutes in, I wasn't really feeling it.
I get it.
But after a while, it had its charm on me for sure.
Okay. I'm definitely glad that it grew on you because it's one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, it was hard for me just because like the narrative just seemed like it was getting lost on me. Like it was like characters' actions. They were doing actions that I didn't understand the motivation for yet.
Yeah.
And the music, like I said, was hard for me to get into. Eventually, because that's how musicals are. It's like you hear one song and it's all about reprises and they have a certain flow to them and identity to them. And once I understood the identity, then it was easier for me to enjoy. And I do have like favorite songs. But at first it was like, I don't know. They were like I said earlier, they're kind of like rapping to it, and they have a lot of time signature changes throughout the songs.
Which is what I love about Sondheim. He totally plays with that a lot. This is also, by the way, we talked about Tim Burton, and we've just seen 2 of his other films who had the same composer, Danny Elfman, do the score. This is the second of the 3 films that Danny Elfman did not do the scores for. First being Ed Wood, which we've not covered, and I love that movie. We should watch it at some point. Not really horror, but it's horror-esque. It's in the family. It's on the umbrella.
Okay. All right.
Second one being this film, so Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, already has its own score, so there's not really much that Danny Elfman could do. And then we also have Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. So that's just a little tidbit that I was like, oh, again, would have gone over my head.
Interesting.
But yeah, another thing that we typically see with Tim Burton films, a lot of the time, we've seen this combination of Tim Burton and Johnny Depp working together as well, which is really fascinating. This is their 7th collaboration. Oh. So I think that's really cool because I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
first time we're covering their collaboration on the podcast.
Yeah, it's actually the first time we're covering their collaborations, which is crazy because there's so many, and there's so many that are notable and loved. It's just so good. Another really cool tidbit that, we talked about is Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter being in Les Miserables.
Yes.
Together. Another person who was in that film who auditioned for this film and was going to be Joanna as Anne Hathaway. Oh. And she didn't get it, but later she was in Alice in Wonderland, and also Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter were in The Looking Glass. So Tim Burton, I don't know if he was behind that one, if I'm being honest. I know that he did the first Alice in Wonderland, but I don't know if he technically was behind The Looking Glass. But I didn't do specifics on that because I did not see that one when it came out. I don't know that it did very well, if I'm being honest.
I don't think I've seen either of the Alice in Wonderland movies.
I will be honest, the first one, fun. A lot of fun. I love his moody take on Alice in Wonderland. You'd enjoy it, I think. But Anne Hathaway and Helena Bonham Carter were both in that first film together for sure, which is really fun. The character, Joanna, is actually 15, which is kind of creepy when you think about it. And the actress who was portraying Joanna, this is her feature film debut. Her name is Jane Weisner. She was actually 19 years old. They really didn't think that she would be able to sell it because she looked too old for the part, being, that Joanna's 15. But she sent them photos of herself without makeup, and they said, okay. So I thought that was interesting, and I thought she was very Tim Burton looking, big eyes, very pale skin, very bleach blonde hair,
right,
or yellow hair as they call it. Really funny is that Helena Bonham Carter was being considered for the role of Mrs. Lovett, which is of course the main character next to Sweeney Todd. And Carter was like, I don't want this to be I'm being handed this role because I'm romantically involved with Tim Burton. So she sent no less than 12 tapes for auditions to Sondheim, and he thought that she did fine. People actually complain a lot about the singing in this movie, being that they're not professional singers.
I thought it was fine.
I thought it was fine. I will say, Helena Bonham Carter is missing some of the range, vocally, to hit some of the notes that I love, specifically because they're so dissonant in the musical. I think it's in A Little Priest. where it's very like, oh, it just sticks out, and it's like almost like a bug in your ear. You're like, oh, I don't like the way that it sounds, but it works so well for the musical that I feel like because maybe she didn't have the range to hit those notes, she went like it was almost like she was lower than where it needed to be. So it just, I don't know, it blended too well for me. I needed it to be more like eerie, because it almost has like an eerie tone to it, and I feel like we missed out on that. But she also rehearsed while baking to get the syncopation.
That's cool.
Which I feel like you'd have to. That is so choreographed that you'd have to hit those markers.
Yeah, I thought she did a perfect job, but I understand I come from a different kind of experience. You know, like earlier I mentioned I like funk music, I like emo music. In general, I am not one of those. You know, one time I remember I used to play music where I worked, when we worked at the same food establishment. And somebody came up to me one time and they said, why are they singing? Like, I don't understand why bands like this sing so bad on purpose. And to me, it was like, I never viewed it that way. It's just, this is just the way they sing, and this is the way they sing for their art, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people that are like, oh, like Adele sings better than T-Pain because T-Pain uses auto-tune or anything like that.
Listen, T-Pain can sing like a motherfucker, though.
And so it's just each art has its own thing. You don't criticize, like, I don't know, an oil painter for not drawing like portraits or abstract art. You know what I'm saying?
Like, there are some people who are just more gifted in some areas than others, but I mean that doesn't make their art any less art.
I agree. Yeah, your vocal quality, like, I don't know. I've always struggled with that a little bit.
Well, you know, for example, we're talking about Hamilton. Lin-Manuel Miranda, great at rapping. He does great, and he's also so talented in like all of the stuff that he does behind the scenes. I mean, he's been behind so many of our really, really wonderful newer Disney movies and the actual music and stuff. He's like so talented, but I do not like his singing voice. His actual singing voice, where he holds a harmony. It's like hearing like nails on a chalkboard, but that doesn't mean that other people don't enjoy it.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I just do not like his singing voice whatsoever. I'm like, Lynn, please. But that's me, and that's my opinion,
personal
and
preference.
that doesn't mean that other people feel that way either. But it's also like, I'm not a hater. I swear when I say this, because I'm not, and this is also funny timing because of lately, but we're not going to get into it. I don't care for Taylor Swift. I don't care for her singing at all. I don't think that it doesn't do anything for me. But I'm glad that other people do enjoy it, and I'm glad other people love it, love it, love it. So I'm glad that people have people that they love. She's just not my artist. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I can appreciate her work and ethic and stuff, because there's a lot of work that goes into it that I wouldn't even begin to understand. But I don't know. I think it's very interesting.
We all have different tastes.
Yeah, I think it's just so interesting that people...
But I will say, what bugs me is that when people use it as a personality trait.
Yes, it's like, we get it. You hate her. Shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, who cares? It's almost like when people were hating on Game of Thrones. They're like, I'm one of the one people who are not watching Game of Thrones. It's like, shut up. Who cares?
Exactly.
I'm not like other girls.
I'm different. Now, I used to hate when things would get popular. I'm sure you remember this.
That's so awful.
I used to hate when things would get mainstream. I was a gatekeeper.
So in general, you still have that tendency, though, that where, like, if something is mainstream, it kind of goes against, like, you. Well,
I've gotten better about it over the years, like, especially because, like, Hamilton was so popular. I was like, I don't want to like that.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
And I love it. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is great. What was I thinking? But like, I sometimes would just not get caught up on like Disney movies, because I was just like, oh, I gotta sit through a movie right now. But I love movies, but I typically go to other genres than Disney myself.
But now you love like Ariana Grande, who
I love Ariana.
Is super mainstream.
Well, yeah, I love Ariana Grande. I will say when she first came out, I wasn't really big into her music, but then she started making other music that did appeal to me, and I did kind of I was like, okay, I vibe with this, and great breakup ballads too. But what's funny is Taylor Swift also makes breakup ballads. I just don't like hers.
Yeah, the overlap between like Ariana and Taylor Swift fans is
so
pretty
crazy.
wide.
Yeah. But I'm just like, whatever, you like who you like, and that's fine. But to me, I did not think that, even if they weren't classically trained, which is funny because Carter actually had a lot of vocal lessons for the movie and stuff. But I think that they did fine. Yeah, I don't think that they're bad.
The whole time, there's not one moment where I questioned it.
But that's my thing, is that Angela Lansbury was one of the original cast members on Broadway of this production, which was created in 1979 for the musical. And she was one of the original Mrs. Lovett. Like, when you think of Mrs. Lovett, a lot of people probably go to Angela Lansbury. And it's just because of the original Broadway. But to me, even though people love her performance, I don't think she sings that well. I think she does, but she doesn't, if that makes sense.
No.
Like,
this is what I was talking about earlier. I don't know. It's like,
it's not bad, but it's not like, to me, it's not like a pretty tonality. It's not like something that you would hear and you're like, wow, this music makes me want to fall asleep and go to sleep on my pillow. Like, this is very like nice, like a nice, smooth, soothing voice. To me, her voice is almost like sharp, not like in like the tone, like musical tones or anything, like flats and sharps. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, but I just don't believe that's indicative of quality. I think that's more just preference. You know?
Well, yeah, and I'm not saying that she's bad at all. I love her as Mrs. Potts. Tale as old as time, bitches. Like, what's up? Love that song. But like, as Mrs. Lovett, like I said, that there's just that one part in A Little Priest where it's very dissonant, and it's just like, it's so like soothing but eerie and also like irritating at the same time, but in a good way. It's almost like it makes her character, Mrs. Lovett, who is also shitty and awful, very much more annoying in some regard. But it's funny, and that's the point that I feel like we do get to miss out on, is that Helena Bonham Carter's voice is almost too, it's not even dim, it's just, it's not as, I don't even know what the word is to describe what Angela Lansbury's sound is, but the quality compared, like, they're two you really can't compare. It's like comparing apples and oranges, of course, just different.
I hate that phrase.
I do too, but you know what I mean?
I'm such a, like, I hate it when people say, you can't really compare the two. I'm like, yes, I can.
But
I can compare sidewalks to, like, billboards.
Sure, you can, but does it make sense to compare them is what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't. That's kind of what, to me, that phrasing means. Like, it doesn't make sense to compare them because they're both so different.
I just don't understand.
Semantics.
Yeah,
I guess so. It's just, some people will be like, I don't know, you can't compare, like, I don't know, Michael Jackson to Nickelback because they're different genres of music. And I'm like, yes, you can. Like,
it's definitely strange to compare the two.
I feel like not. Like, they have their similarities and differences, of course. That's the reason.
Then, yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess if you want to go there, then yeah, for sure. Then Angela Lansbury, Helena Bonham Carter, just very different performances. And it's not a bad thing. It's just there are things that I love more about Angela Lansbury's performance, but there are things that I love more about Helena Bonham Carter's performance. Right. I just think that Angela Lansbury and the way that the musical is developed is that it's way funnier. And there are a lot of jokes that I feel like don't land because of the way that they sing it in this movie. And even though it is darker in quality, the overall theme is supposed to be like dark humor.
Well, that's very interesting to know, just because I kind of agree, because I didn't think this movie was very funny at all. I didn't feel like it never had the intention of being funny. There's a couple of moments where I did think, oh, that's funny. Like when you first saw Johnny Depp in his bathing outfit out on the beach, and him just being so like, still have that face where he's like growling and upset. Yeah, exactly. I thought that was funny. But those moments were few and far in between.
What's funny is that it's meant to be funny, and I don't feel like it lands very well. But I know that Tim Burton, it's funny because I know that, we just watched Beetlejuice, and those toe the line between dark and, humorous very well.
Yeah. That movie is more whimsical. This one also has its whimsy, of course.
It does.
But it's definitely different.
Definitely different. I mean, obviously more serious tones, more darker tones ultimately. I mean, even though what's darker than death, I mean, murder, I guess, would be a step, but it's in the same, a version of death. I don't know. It's also revenge and treating women as objects, and kind of sexual assault. Yeah, 100%, I would say. Cannibalism. So many dark themes, if we're going to be honest. Greed. Capitalism in this poor time. Times is hard, But I think that it does miss out on the brilliance of his comedy in the songs, because A Little Priest is so funny, and we don't get to hear a lot of the way that it's supposed to be performed, because one of my favorite lines is, like an actor, it's compactor, and then Sweeney Todd's like, but it always arrives overdone, and he's very the way that he sings it in the musical is very different from what we get, because to me, without the subtitles, I wasn't getting the jokes. They weren't landing as well as after I've seen the musical in person. Then I'm like, oh, everyone's laughing. This is meant to be dark humor, and we don't get that with the movie. And I feel like we missed out on it. And that's just one of my biggest critiques, because as somebody who loves the musical a lot, I don't feel like everyone who gets to see this version gets to appreciate the humor that is really like sprinkled throughout, because it's really a funny show. It's so funny.
Well, I think that's part of the fun in it too, though, that they are different. So like, when you go see the musical version, it'll at least have that surprise for you.
Oh my gosh. It's the way that it works is so well done. But anyway, I don't want to delve too much on that.
Okay.
Because there's just so many other things to talk about. So some differences, of course, between the actual musical adaptation and this film, because both of them are ultimately adaptations of the original history and the book by Hugh Wheeler, which I've never read the book by Hugh Wheeler, but I intend to in the future. Pirelli is Irish when he reveals himself in the musical. In the film, he reveals himself as English. So his what was his name? He said, "Call me Davy."
Yeah.
Davy Collins, and then in the musical he's Daniel O'Higgins. But of course he presents himself as Adolfo Pirelli, the Italian barber. It's terrible. It's a horrible accent.
And I love all his how he makes his Italian accent, how he adds an A and O to every word.
That song is so funny to me, and I think that that comedy does land, and it was ultimately shortened. There's a lot that are different from, and for time's sake, of course, you can't go through every single song. One thing that we definitely miss out on throughout the musical, we have essentially like a Greek choir, kind of how we'd get in like Little Shop of Horrors. But they always sing this version of the Ballad of Sweeney Todd, and they're like narrating this as it happens a lot of the time. So in between some of these different scenes, they'll weave in, and then we get like this, really cool like moment, and it's like a reprise of this ballad throughout the show multiple times. So we missed out on it ultimately, and they just do an instrumental version, and ultimately is taken out because Burton thought it was too theatrical, which agreed it is, but those are really fun, and I feel like we missed out on it.
Pirelli's Miracle Elixir, one of my favorite songs.
Oh my gosh,
it's just so fun.
This is piss with ink. Love it. Love It was thrown into the oven. That's actually done in both the musical and the movie, so that was true to the story. When Joanna is taken to the insane asylum, she actually kills the guy Fogg from Fogg's asylum instead, but in the movie they did the inmates, which I thought was a little bit more sweet. I was like, sweet revenge. Love it.
Yeah, for sure. That was scary.
Scary?
Yeah, in general, that always freaks me out when, a bunch of people are... When somebody is, threatened by a crowd, it's always so scary to me.
Yeah, but it's chef's kiss for that revenge, because they deserve their peace.
Yeah, it's a movie about revenge, for sure.
Oh my gosh, yes. Everywhere. Pirelli also has a tooth-pulling contest with Sweeney Todd in the musical. Not in the tour or the recent revival, but in the previous versions. We don't get to see that in the film either. And Tobias goes crazy at the end and has a short speech before killing Todd about the meat grinders and the pies and such like that. And also, what they did different from the original musical is that Toby was like an older mentally disabled person, and I think that what they did was a little bit more innocent, being a child.
Yeah.
Because it didn't feel as harsh. I don't know. It always felt a little weird whenever I watched the musical. I was like, oh, I don't like that, because it felt like they just took advantage of Toby's character because of him being disabled, which I did not like. So definitely ableism there.
For sure. Also, I want to bring something up real quick.
Okay.
Most people name Toby is a nickname typically for Tobias. I just want to mention. Earlier you mentioned him.
Yeah, I know, but I've never met anybody named Tobias, so I just didn't know how to pronounce it.
Have you ever met a Toby? No, it's not the pronunciation. Really. It's mostly just but they changed his name to Toby in the movie.
Well, because his name is Tobias.
Yeah.
They call him Toby throughout the whole movie. They don't call him Tobias.
They don't. It's just...
but in the show, it's Tobias. To me,
what if... It's, okay, that makes sense. Okay. I was just concerned that you were his name is Thomas, but they changed his name to Tommy in the movie.
No.
I was like, well, that's the same name.
No. Yeah, okay. No, that's not what I meant. What I meant was that, they don't call him by the full name.
Okay, like they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the same things that do happen is that Toby does kill Sweeney Todd in both versions, so that is true to the story. He actually, by the shock, he comes out of the sewer with white hair, and then he's, then he goes quote unquote crazy.
Makes sense. I did feel so like it ends so abruptly.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh my gosh, well, what happens next? What happens to the kid? What happens to Joanna? What happens to Anthony?
I'm glad you asked, because in the musical version, the police, Joanna and Anthony, bust in on Tobias, and that is what they see is all these dead bodies in Tobias, which is horrible and terrible, and I hate that's the ending, but we don't get that kind of ending here, so it's kind of left to your imagination there.
Yeah.
Wait, so is it like inferred that the police think that Tobias is a killer, or
That I don't necessarily.
It sounds like it's also left up in the open.
Yeah, kind of.
Interesting. Also, like, he shows up with white hair and it's like he's crazy now. So what do they put in the English sewers then?
Well, I mean, they did
what's
that
in
with
there
the...
that's causing people to go crazy and bleach their hair?
Well, fair, but I mean, they do that in the Pennywise. I don't know if you remember with the bully.
Yeah, that's right.
Because like he was so scared. That's like a weird trope. I don't understand that.
I like
I've
it.
never heard of this trope before. I mean, I've never seen it happen in real life, but I've heard of this trope where like they get so scared or so shocked by something that their hair turns white. But
That's
like,
cool.
I've never seen it happen in person.
I think it's like a reference to an old saying. It's like the color is shocked out of them or something like that.
I guess that makes sense. They say your hair turns gray out of stress or whatever sometimes.
Then why
and so
is
maybe
not-
they got like so stressed out.
Why
in such
is
a
my
short
hair
amount
not
of time.
gray? I'm always stressed. I'm a chronic
Maybe
stressor.
it'll hit you in a couple of years,
A lot of the musical numbers were shortened, and I think that we're missing out on a couple that are my personal favorites. And I think it's just so different, because when I've seen this live, I'm like, oh man, this is so, like, it's so hard to compare the two because they're so different. But just a little bit of the walkthrough here. So Act 1, we meet Sweeney Todd, and he's on this boat with Anthony, and they go back to London, and then they part their ways. And then we have, of course, the Ballad of Sweeney Todd introducing us. No Place Like London. We missed out on some of the beggar woman's laments. They changed it for the film to Alms. Not that she doesn't do that in the musical, but it's not like that. And she also is way more inappropriate in the musical. Like, not only is she's like begging for change, but she's also like basically like, I'll fuck you for change kind of thing. Like and it's part of the like abrupt, like, whoa, kind of shocking humor. It's supposed to be like funny, but it's also kind of like, it's kind of sad, but whatever. I'm glad they took that out, because I think that it wouldn't have fit the tone
for
at
the
all.
movie. Yeah.
So we don't get that. We do get a barber and his wife, and that's one of the songs that is left in its entirety, and I love that song. It's one of the sad, the sad story about how, Benjamin Barker came to be Sweeney Todd, but we don't know all of that yet. We're supposed to be like, oh. Worst Pies in London is one of the only few songs left in its entirety, and I love that song because of the choreography and the, playing with the rhythms there. It's just so much fun. And I think it's just also, I don't even know how to explain it. Wait, what's your hurry? Like, it's just so fun. Just really.
Frank, did you pick up that Mrs. Lovett was baking cats into her pies?
No.
Yeah, that's what she was talking about. She talked about how all the cats in the neighborhood have mysteriously gone missing. Quick. Yeah.
No
Putting
denying
pussies into
times is
pies.
hard, so.
Yeah.
It's awful.
It's awful.
Great
it's
song.
also funny.
It's great. It's a great song. Poor Things, the reprise of the Barber and his wife. It's one of my favorite versions as well, because it starts off very similar and then it gets really fast and stuff. Very fun version of that. And I think that that story behind it is horrible, though, because we find out that Judge Turpin essentially sent away Benjamin Barker for no reason other than he wanted that man's wife. And she refused him several times, and then he basically tricked her into coming to his house, and then it's implied that he sexually assaults her in front of everyone. I think that the movie does a very good job of explaining that in a way that is not insensitive, topically. I don't remember exactly how the musical portrays it, but I know that it was more apparent in the film at least. So I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense, and I hate it here. My Friends with Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Levitt is another really good song.
That's when you first start seeing the duet thing go on where they sing over each other.
Love it. It's just so nice, so like hauntingly beautiful, and this is one of my favorite like versions of it. I think they do really, really good, and we also get to see the beautiful, razors that, were built for this. I missed out on one of the best quotes. At last, my arm is complete again. And then it's followed by the ballad and the musical.
Yeah, very Frankenstein almost.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp talks not American.
He definitely does not talk American. But boy, does he do some great character acting, because he is just so, like, I don't know. He does so well playing just creepy characters, and I love it. But I also have always been a big fan of his work. Barring any controversies, I don't want to delve into that, but he is just such a good character actor, and I am mesmerized by anything he's in, because he just really immerses himself fully into the character and what they are. And that's one thing that I hate, is seeing the critiques that Johnny Depp did not put forth any mood, because I think that he was so serious about his revenge, and I think that he does portray that very well. But again, you just miss out on the humor, because it's so twisted.
I also did find myself like, just first of all, I like this movie. I don't like Sweeney Todd.
What do you mean?
Like the person, the character, because
he's awful.
Yeah, he's awful.
But I mean, why don't you like the portrayal? You don't like his portrayal of Sweeney Todd?
No, I think it's fine. It's just a little flat to me. Like you mentioned, like he's serious the whole movie, and that's fine. But like, I never find myself like enamored by his performance.
But do you also like not find yourself rooting for him to get his revenge against the terrible Judge Turpin?
Definitely not. No.
What?
No, not whatsoever.
I was rooting for him.
He just seems like
I was rooting for him just because Judge Turpin is a certified freak.
True.
Like, not in a good way.
True.
Yeah, no, I was definitely. I mean, it's just, it's mostly like if he wanted like if he wanted to like get a life, like that was like, oh, I'm gonna kill Turpin so I can be with my daughter. But it seemed like he did not give a crap about his daughter throughout the whole movie, and he just wanted to kill this man. And my headcanon is that he went crazy in prison, and now he just wants to kill people.
I mean,
because like he doesn't just kill Turpin.
I'm thinking of The Office. I'm thinking of, Prison Mike, the Dementors. That's what I'm thinking of. Like, but yeah, ultimately prison does change you. I mean, he was also innocent. So like, imagine he had years to just sit there and stew. Girl boss of him.
I was more feeling for the daughter, and how she was being abused, and she has a father out there, and he could just care less about saving her. And like, even like, she's kind of used as bait at the end of the movie, where he was like so excited for Anthony, like, oh, we can get her, and he's over here thinking, if we get her, I can kill him.
And I think you see snippets of him early on where he wants a connection with his daughter again, and you see that like when he goes into the apartment and he sees her baby crib and he sees her like baby doll and stuff like that. But as the movie progresses, Joanna gets less and less and less important to him, as he gets crazier and crazier and more obsessed with revenge. And I mean, you see that ultimately enacted at the end. He doesn't care really about finding his wife or like not savoring, but like grieving for and accepting his wife's death. He doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about Joanna. He literally threatens Joanna because he doesn't recognize her. Doesn't recognize his wife.
Yeah, so see, that's actually, I enjoyed it when he got his, like, when he found out, oh, I just killed my wife. I was like, that's what you get. Yeah. And especially, too, like, the whole time, the way she was treating Miss Lovett is, like, even though she's shitty, too, but, like, he was using her that whole time. And like, got mad at her, would ignore her. He's just a douchey guy. I don't like Sweeney Todd. Let
me just say something. I'm not for girl failure. I'm not for it, because Mrs. Lovett is shitty, right? hear me out though. She's even more shitty than what you're saying because, like, your girl literally knew Lucy, his wife, was alive and was like, let me hop on. She wanted him for herself, and that's weird and very not cool.
I caught on to that really early, too, because... or that, like, something was amiss here. Because obviously Mrs. Lovett is, like, obsessed with Todd. But... and that's weird in general. But... in the beginning, when she meets Sweeney Todd, she tells him, like, oh, yeah, the wife, Lucy, of the barber, like, yeah, she used to live up there. I knew her. Like, she took a poison. It was arsenic or whatever. And then, like, 20 minutes later, when she's so obsessed with Sweeney Todd and trying to get him to like her, she's like, what even was her hair color again? What did she look like? And I was just like, this lady, I know you know her.
Shitty.
You're gaslighting him right now. What do you mean, what's her hair color? You've been known.
And when I was happy with her death, because I was like, girl, you done did it to yourself. Because when he finally caught on, because yes, he did get, enraged. He was just seeing red. No pun intended. And he really just wanted to kill Judge Turpin, and he would kill anyone in the way. And of course, he killed Beetle Bamford. He killed so many people, including his wife not recognizing her. Almost killed his daughter not recognizing her. That was just crazy and sad, ultimately. But then when he realizes it, he's like, oh my God. She manipulated the fuck out of him. I think that's also not cool either. He was very vulnerable. He was fresh out of fucking prison, and definitely, probably, in isolation, it can definitely mess with people. And here's my thing. She was like, I'd be twice the wife she was. I'm glad he threw her in the fucking oven, dumb bitch.
So you're a bigger Mrs. Lovett hater than Sweeney Todd?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am. 1,000%.
I do like that one scene, though, where she finds Pranelli's or whatever his name's body, and she's like, oh my God, you've killed a man. I can't believe this. This is crazy. And then Sweeney Todd is like, well, he knew who I was and was going to blackmail me and take half of my profits. And then she's like, oh, well, that's a different thing then.
Yeah.
She's like, I thought you were losing your marbles. Which is funny.
I was surprised when she got thrown into the oven. I thought what was going to happen, I thought that was when Sweeney Todd was going to die, because they had the whole song earlier where the boy, Toby, was like, oh, you'll never be harmed while I'm around. And supposedly he was hiding somewhere down there. So I was like, oh, this is the part where he's going to show up and they're going to kill Sweeney Todd and live happily ever after.
Wasn't that crazy, his realization? Like him eating the pie, like, ugh.
Oh, yeah. That's gnarly. Even the whole time, like, while she was showing him... She was showing him like the downstairs.
Give it a good grind.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, this poor child.
I love it. It's so twisted.
Yeah, it's
so twisted.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, but like, listen.
Or even just like the bodies coming down from upstairs and just splattering on the ground.
Every time that happened, it squicked me out so bad, but in like a good way. I was like, wow, I can't believe that they've gone this brutal.
And the sound.
They did it again and again.
It was
and
like
again.
Something like that. But I loved it. It was just so fun because it's like, who thinks of this? It's just crazy. Like, oh my God. It's just, they're running a fucking business. They're like, we girl bossing out here. They're like, we ain't got no money. Times is hard. We don't want to kill cats anymore. Let's move on to terrible humans that people are not going to miss. Loved it. It's great. Such a creative concept. I mean, killing people who are coming in for a shave. Although it did make me sad, though, because some of the people, I was like, oh, what if they had family and they're like, I'm going out for a quick little shave. I'll be back before dinner. And then, boom, they back.
As far as crime is concerned, like, there's no way
they wouldn't have gotten caught sooner.
Because at some point, investigation is going to be like, man, all these people were going to go to the same barber. Like, there's a coincidence going on here.
Yeah, and then, of course, that would smell. That's why Beetle Bamford ultimately came around, is that he's like, we've gotten reports of your chimney stinking, and then they're like, oh, what about a shave? And he's like, okay. Like, come on.
See, Beetle Bamford, as crappy as he is, he had more charm to me than Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's because I think Sweeney is supposed to be the brooding main character,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to project onto him a little bit, so he's a little bit blander by nature.
Yeah.
But all these other characters are so colorful.
Yeah,
so
colorful is a great way to say it, because I felt the same way about Helena Bonham Carter. I mean, we just talked about like how awful her character is, but anytime she was on screen, I was entertained.
Yeah, I mean, she's also just so funny because like,
Yeah.
meanwhile, like Sweeney Todd is a one-track mind,
Yeah,
and he just
exactly.
wants to get the judge. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all he wants. And then she's like, oh, I've got my man, I've got my business, I have my boy Toby now.
And
we can get married.
I guess it does add to that.
It's funny.
That dynamic. And as long as, we have all those other characters to add that color, maybe it doesn't matter so much that, we have the main character being as one track as he is.
What do you think about Anthony and Joanna? Because we didn't really talk about them at all. But Anthony being a little... I mean, it's also just so funny because you really miss out on some funny parts, being that they cut some of my favorite stuff from their interactions.
Well, Anthony, he had my favorite song in the
Beautiful,
movie, probably.
right?
When he's singing about Joanna. Oh. I love that song. Anytime he would show up, they'd at least play a little snippet of it in the background too.
One of my favorite songs that we missed out on, it's only 1 minute and 30 seconds long or something like that. It is, so we don't get to see this happen, but the part where Judge Turpin is in the chair, Sweeney Todd's ready, and he's about to do it, and then Anthony's like, she's gonna run away with me, Joanna, she's giving me her key. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen like that in a musical. So what happens is, yes, they agree to run away together, but so it's so funny. So there's a song where he sneaks in and they're talking, and they're basically like, oh yeah, let's go run away and get married together. And she's like freaking out at the same time, having like a little bit of anxiety, like panic attack that like Judge Turpin's going to come back home while Anthony's there. It's so funny, but it's also like so cute and romantic at the same time because they don't know each other, but that's also kind of the weird part of it. But it's also funny because you see that happen all the time in movies where they're like, I love you, even though I just met you.
Yeah, I guess that's another, I mentioned Shakespearean quality to it, and she's up in the window and he's down there.
I hate that we don't get enough Joanna in this movie. Everyone else we get enough of, not Joanna. And that pisses me off because she has a wonderful part as well with, there is another, like a quartet. The part where Sweeney Todd is singing and Anthony is trying to go around and look for Joanna when she's in the Fog's Asylum. And we also get this part with the beggar woman where she's talking about the city on fire. They kind of combined it instead. And so typically Joanna's in that quartet is what they call it for that song as well, with little tidbits from Kiss Me in there. So it's really disappointing because I just feel like you miss out on some of those wonderful melodies that we don't get to have. They also cut down the contest. It's incredibly long. The contest where Pirelli is going back and forth with Sweeney Todd. They cut it down. I don't know why they did that. Maybe for time's sake because it's like 7 to 10 minutes.
I agree with all the cuts. I've never seen the musical, and I'm sure that's a great appreciation, but it's just a different medium.
It's very long.
And you gotta adapt it.
Let's see. They cut a lot of the Beggar Woman's specific songs, which is also, again, fine. They cut some of Anthony's songs. He has a song called Amiss, and he also has another Kiss Me, so there's a Kiss Me Part 2. Ladies and Their Sensitivities, which is Beetle Bamford and the judge. That's when they're walking, and he goes to the parlor, and he's like, excuse me, my lord, may I request my lord? That's a great song, and they cut out the rest of it, and you miss out on some of those wonderful, it's very, I don't even know how to describe it. It's very creepy, though, in nature, because they're just creeps. They're creeps. And it's almost in alluding to women, and their sensitivities.
Watching this movie, I didn't know much about any, you mentioned Sondheim. I didn't know about his involvement. I didn't know who the man was. But I did get the sense of Tim Burton made this movie. And I do feel like Tim Burton has a very specific glimpse and portrayal of women in his films, and his inclusion of his wife in them. And one of the songs I like in this is "Pretty Women." It's a song.
Love that song.
It's a great song, and I do think it's strange to just see men talking about how oh, women are so soft and they're so nice or whatever, especially in the year 2024. It's kind of weird. But I relate to it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I do.
Romanticize women?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not just romanticizing them, because in Pretty Women they do a better job of romanticizing, but in Ladies and Their Sensitivities, I mean, especially in the first couple lines, Beetle Bamford's like, until they bow to your every will, and it's like, that's weird. Stop it. But again, you don't really pick up on all of the humor because it's supposed to be like uncomfortable and like gross and funny at the same time.
But I mean, even in Pretty Women, like, you know, it's not just Sweeney Todd singing there. It's Judge Turpin too, and obviously he's singing about Joanna, presumably. Yeah. So it's so weird.
Can I go on a short tangent?
Please.
It doesn't relate to the music exactly, but you were talking about how like something was like funny, but it's uncomfortable at the same time. And Judge Turpin, especially, I love how in the design of his house, when you go into the interior, everything that you see him interact with has these like naked, lascivious, like paintings of women, and it's so uncomfortable but so funny at the same time. And I immediately knew what his character was before he ever even spoke a line, because you see him like he's got a peephole into Joanna's room, and it's hidden by one of those paintings. Yeah. Like a sexual painting of a woman.
Creepy.
That's creepy.
Which was super creepy. And then when he pulls Anthony into his house, the entire library that he's in, before he ever mentions having like paintings of all these and like drawings of all of these sexual lady things, the room is decorated in like naked women. And I was like, oh my God, I know exactly what kind of guy this guy is.
He's a pig. It's gross. And literally, it's kind of funny because he's also a judge. I don't know. Judge Turpin's awful, but I love Alan Rickman so much that it's so hard to hate him, because I'm just like, oh, but it's Alan Rickman. But he just plays a good villain, you know?
He does. It's interesting. I wonder if they often cast him as a villain.
Well, somebody had asked him that because I was going to include it. And then I was like, well, for time, I'm just not going to include all of that. And they were like, why do they often cast you as the bad guy? He was like, actually, I feel like it's quite the opposite. I feel like I'm cast as a good guy a lot of the time. And then he's like, well, maybe it's the movies that I like the most that you're cast as bad guys in. But I mean, he does so well at being bad. I mean, a lot of the movies I've seen of him, he's bad.
Yeah. I mean, I love him as Snape.
Love him as Snape. But I mean, he's misunderstood. So Pretty Women, that was one of the other songs that was in its entirety. Epiphany was one of the other songs in its entirety that they included in the film. Epiphany was such a beautiful song. And
how's it go?
That's when he almost had Judge Turpin, and then he's like, out, I say out. But he doesn't do it like that in the movie. He doesn't have enough oomph to Epiphany, but that's really my biggest complaint, is that as much as I love Johnny Depp, he just doesn't have enough oomph behind the songs. I don't feel like like he's so angry because of his revenge. Although there are parts with his facial expressions that really sell it. Specifically when he, takes the blade and is like I was like, that's wonderful. Keep that energy. And he didn't. He didn't. And I was like, okay. And it's not that I hate his portrayal, but again, they don't have to work as hard as theatrical productions because they have to do that to sell the whole thing. And I think that Epiphany is really good, but it's not as good as it could have been. And like we mentioned, A Little Priest cut way short. There were so many jokes that, they did not include. It was way longer and really, really funny. A Little Priest is so, so good. And then that was basically the end of Act 1. They end with that because then they start Act 2 by cooking the pies and killing the people and stuff. In Act 2, they shorten a song called God That's Good, but they don't include the ensemble in it. And that's when Toby is singing about Mrs. Lovett's meat pies. But the ensemble is supposed to say, God That's Good, more hot pies, stuff like that. And they don't include any of that. So they really, I don't know. It doesn't do a disservice to me personally, because that song is kind of annoying in my opinion. So I was like, I'm cool with that change. Joanna, the quartet we talked about, By the Sea is way longer, but I'm glad they shortened it because it just drags on a little bit. So they shortened it in perfect places, and I thought the By the Sea was perfect.
The scene was amazing, just to see, this whole different color palette in the movie.
Where it's so glum.
Yeah, and then at the end, it does this cool transition from those colors to the, dreary colors that the rest of the movie is.
I also love it because it's just so funny that this is such a serious tonality of revenge, and they have to make it to survive, and then she's like, but let's get married.
Yeah, this is like her perfect dream.
It's so fun, and I love Johnny Depp's portrayal during this is probably the funniest throughout the whole movie, funny. Because he's like, he doesn't want to kiss her, and he's like he looks disgusted, but then he also like tries to put his hand on her leg, and then he like moves it quickly, and he's like, no, I don't. It's just funny. I don't know. It landed for me because I was like, obviously. Funny. They have a camaraderie, like a companionship there, but he doesn't view her the way that she views him.
No.
And that is clear. Very, very clear. And it's funny. The wig maker sequence is actually a song. They didn't include the song. They just did the whole sequence with more talking and him writing the letter. The letter's also a song that they didn't do. They shortened Not While I'm Around. We also have something that they lumped together called parlor songs, and it's called Sweet Polly Plunkett, Tower of Bray, and Sweet Polly Plunkett Reprise, and that is with Beetle Bamford, Lovett, Tobias, and Beetle Bamford again, all of that, and they don't include it. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if maybe Timothy Spall, could he sing? Like, is that why you said no? Like, I don't know.
Probably a timing thing.
Could be. I mean, there's a lot of songs.
You said like A Little Priest is like the beginning of the second act or something.
The end of the first.
The end of the first. There's only like 5 more songs in the track listing and the movie after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it's definitely cut down by quite a bit.
Let's see. They have the song where Lovett and Todd are searching for Toby in the sewers. Cut that way down because it's an actual song. Beggar Woman's Lullaby. I think they cut that down. I don't think we got the Beggar Woman's Lullaby, but we did get the final sequence with Sweeney Todd and Lovett. They changed it as well. So Judge Turpin was supposed to be singing in that. I don't know how that happened. I'm assuming he kills him in that sequence because it probably combined Pretty Woman again. Mm-hmm. But we get that, but not quite the way that I think that it was meant to go. And then we also apparently Judge Turpin, I don't remember this because it's been a hot minute since I've seen this live. Joanna, he has his own version of Joanna, Judge Turpin, and they cut that completely, and I'm really kind of sad about that.
Yeah, I would have loved to see that actually.
Yeah, and then again they end with the Ballad of Sweeney Todd, Full Company, and I just love it. It's just a good musical. You said you had favorite songs though, so I'm very curious. Other than Joanna.
I just meant those two. Is really Pirelli's Miracle Elixir and Joanna were definitely my favorite songs, and Pretty Woman.
I mean, just the melodies. He just has a way with writing. It's just so beautiful. Like,
Yeah. I mean, Joanna's just beautiful. Miracle Elixir is fun.
It is fun.
And Pretty Women, I just, like I said, like I do like women, and it's weird to me because it's not. To me, it's still a little problematic because it's still like it's male gaze to me. And I'm a male, so I do
flower picking, letter writing.
Exactly. So I still I relate to it, but I still find it like it's almost like a mirror, looking at yourself in a mirror, and you're like, oh.
You're like, ew.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know what's funny when you're talking about that? My brain just goes immediately to when me and Bailey were like, during the New Year's Evil episode, because you were like, and clearly she had, big tits or something, and I was like, what?
Yeah, we were like, absolutely not.
If you guys want to listen to a funny episode for a movie, I can't imagine anybody listening to this has ever seen New Year's Evil. But watch the movie first of all. It's a treat.
It is.
And then listen to our episode about it.
Yeah, New Year's Evil is a really funny episode, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite episodes.
It's probably one of our funniest episodes.
What was the line of that guy? What did he say? Like, and I'm evil.
You can call me evil or something.
It's so bad. But yeah, so that's essentially, in a nutshell, this is Sweeney Todd. All in all, what were your general thoughts, reactions, feelings? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Would you love to see this live?
Oh,
because
please.
Of this?
I really would love to see a live production of it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Like it really made an impression on me. The more I watched it, the more I listened to the music, I enjoyed it more and more. And it's like, I talked about identity earlier. It has a strong identity. Like this is like, you could tell if you listen to any of these songs outside of the context of the rest of them, you could tell it's from Sweeney Todd because they have this particular sound, tone, rhythm to them. And another reason I like the film just generally is because I love tragedies in this movie. Like I said, it's very tragic in the way that there are like, Johnny Depp doesn't realize that he killed his wife.
Yeah.
The general outcome of his wife's life and what that amounted to be. The whole situation with Joanna losing both her parents now.
Yeah.
And so like there's just, or even like the little kid was abused by his Italian barber guy, but then he moved out. But it all like, you're talking about the musical. He ultimately went crazy basically.
Yeah.
And so like nobody has a happy ending.
Nobody.
And I like that. I like that.
I like that stuff too. The only people who kind of do have a happy ending, at least it's implied, it would be Anthony and Joanna, which is like, aw, they're the little lovers get away.
I hope they live a happy life.
But at the same time, it's like, man, this is really, really sad, dark shit. But it's also twisty.
Yeah, it's very twisted. So
because it's like these people are like, more hot pies. God, that's good. And they're eating people, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's messed up.
That's like. I wonder, like, how Toby found, like, I don't know, was it part of a finger or a fingernail? I don't remember.
It was a finger.
And I'm like, if he got that, they must be getting lazy or something. Like, how, like, the other people should, like, had to have found something.
Oh, yummy,
Like, just take the little finger, just. Like it's like a little fry or something. Just I don't know, like the little milkshake off of it or something.
I'm sure that has some historical context to it. I'm sure.
Well, I mean, think about like Victorian London. Think about how like.
You mentioned capitalism earlier, and I was like, that was definitely not capitalism.
No, but I mean, like in the way
monarchy.
That. Well, no, but I mean, like in the way that like. I mean, it kind of could
business enterprise.
Yeah, business enterprise. I mean, they literally were poor.
Yeah.
She was killing like street cats to make ends, and she had nobody in her restaurant. And then once they start killing people and having better quality food because they don't what the price of meat, what it is when you get it,
I see.
And then
like a metaphor for capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, and then eventually they start doing well. And it's like, okay, now their business is good, and now they're thriving and stuff, and now they want more of that.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, when they get the taste of it, and then they continue,
And it's like at the sake of other people.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's like other people, and people go missing and stuff. And I just wonder how people like navigated that. But I mean, I just think of like back then too, like how disgusting that time period was, and how unhygienic and gross everything was back in the day, and stuff like chamber pots, people fucking throwing their piss and shit out in the streets too. It's like, okay, but you guys are cool. You guys are cool with doing that, but like can't eat people. I don't know. It's like now you have standards. It's just funny. I don't know. It's ironic.
I'm sure people are going to look back on us 100 years from now and think, oh my gosh, those guys were animals.
I guess let's jump into the ratings.
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
Love the movie. It was great. My critiques are mostly over like rewatching this movie would just be like it's just a pacing. It's a little long. For me, just feeling long. And, it is a little... I don't know what the word is, but it's not as easygoing of a watch as some other movies like Beetlejuice.
Okay.
And that's not a slight against it. That's just, me personally, the movies I typically rewatch or don't rewatch often. But yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I give it an 8 out of 10.
I enjoy it very, very much. It's something that I've watched first. It was my first experience with this musical in general, and I think that all of the cast does a fantastic and phenomenal job with everything. Knowing that Stephen Sondheim was on it and he also appreciated and enjoyed it makes me appreciate it more, because I did not know that until today, which was very shocking to me. And I think that people shit on it for a lot of different reasons. And again, if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. That's one of the beauties of choice. But I mean, if you don't like this musical version, you can always listen to, other things as well, or listen to different, like the actual musical, because I know that they cut a lot of it short. But again, it's for movie purposes and storytelling purposes, because nobody wants to sit through 2 hours long of just music from a musical, because you could literally just go watch community theater or something and find out there. But anyway, love it. I think it's great. With that being said, my critiques being that you don't get the comedy that is, originally written, but it does have a beautiful tonality that highlights the darkness and the really twisted parts of the story. And ultimately what drives Sweeney Todd to his madness and his revenge. I mean, killing everything in sight. I love it, and I think it does show a lot of good things, but it does do a lot of other things that do a disservice to the story. This might be a little tougher for me. Ooh. I'm gonna say 7.5 if we could do that. Just because it's hard. I can't give it a 7 in good conscience because that's too low for me, but I don't want to give it an 8 because it's not as great as an 8 would be to me.
That's fair. That's fair.
I know we don't like doing halves, but
well, that puts it solidly at number 3 for our Tim Burton season. Number 1 being Beetlejuice, number 2 Beetlejuice. Oh, and number 3 being Sweeney Todd.
Yep, being Sweeney Todd. Yeah.
Sweeney Todd. What is it called?
The Demon Barber of Fleet Street.
Yeah, that.
Bailey, what would you rate it?
You know, I think I'm gonna put it at like a 7 or a 7.5. Initially, I was thinking 8 because I did really enjoy the movie, but then in reflection, I'm thinking of future Tim Burton movies, and I'm like, well, there are definitely some that I like more. And fair. Beetlejuice, I already rated at like a 9 and a 9.5 or something along those lines. Yeah. So
you got to put it into context.
Yeah, I got to put it into context. I don't think Sweeney Todd is going to hit me quite as well as some other Tim Burton movies that we'll get to later on. But I still really, really enjoyed it, and I do want to rewatch it semi-often.
All right.
That's wonderful news, and I'm so glad to hear that. Next week, we'll be finishing out our Tim Burton season.
The first half of it.
The first part of the Tim Burton season with Dark Shadows.
Woo! I'm so excited for this one.
Enjoy your Spooktember.
Ooh. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Fright or Flight, a Live Oaks Village production. This episode was hosted by Geraldine Johnson and Saul Alberto Arzmendi Ochoa. Produced by me, Bailey B. Edited by Geraldine Johnson and music composition by Saul Alberto Arzmendi Ochoa.